Hey, some berries looks like. That looks kind of odd. I was spending a lot of time trying to digest this information today. This was actually on the Canadian Bar Association site. That's basically for lawyers. It says, new drone regulations are coming to Canada. Are you ready for the changes? So apparently they're having some kind of, I guess, conference call, like to update people. So it made me wonder, wait, did something come out and I wasn't aware of it? So I tried to research a bit about it, and apparently there was like a session that just happened a few days ago. To my understanding, it's more of a just opinions and proposals still, not final, but it gave some new interesting things, I thought. So anyone else, feel free to chime in here, put in your comments, additional notes, because I'm just reading it from the perspective of what's listed as well as what I understand just as a recreational flyer. So maybe people that are in the commercial arena or whatever, RC, FPV, maybe you'll have kind of a different input or interpretation of what was written here. It says here, COPA and other stakeholders were invited to hear TCCA's proposal on the future of drone regulations. Below is a rundown of these regulations presented on May 23rd in Ottawa. These will go to the Gazette too before the end of the year. It is important to note that these will form the recommendations to Treasury Board ministers and as such are not final or official until they are published in the Gazette. So right off the bat, there seems to be interesting stuff. It says here, 2 operating categories. Weight classes abolished will be based on the type of operation. Limited, which means not near or over people unassociated with the flight. Greater than 30 meters, not in controlled airspace. Complex, which means near less than 30 meters from people unassociated with the flight and or in controlled airspace. Flights over large public assemblies will be subject to a flight operation certificate. No differentiation for commercial versus recreational ops. There will be an exemption for model aircraft flyers. Changing terminology from UAV to RPAS, remotely piloted aerial systems. Unmanned aerial systems too gender specific and not inclusive enough. Yeah, so these are kind of the progress and proposals so far. The immediate thing that sticks out to me is saying the weight class is abolished. So I guess in the good sense, that's good for people that fly a little larger drones, like for example, the Phantoms versus something like a Mavic. Technically, they will be all treated the same in that sense. So I guess that's good. I guess the negative would be for that, technically speaking, if the weight classes are abolished, then the less than 250 gram drones no longer applies in terms of being able to fly anywhere that you want, unrestricted, so to speak, like obviously within reason. So that would say anything even from a 1 gram drone, for example, even that one I talked about, like that insect drone the other day, would technically fall under all of these guidelines and stuff. The one saying the commercial and the recreational ops is kind of interesting because it was mentioned that before. They said they wanted to get rid of the SFOC, like in general for most things, whereas this one says it will just be required. You're requiring it for, like, for example, flying over huge crowds, like I'm guessing like a concert. But that kind of makes me wonder, like just based on what I read from here, does that mean, for example, now a recreational guy could do commercial work? Or let's just say a real estate agent is like saying, hey, come videotape this for me or something like that. Would a recreational guy be able to do that now without the need in SFOC? I can imagine that making a lot of commercial people mad, because I remember in the session there was at least one person, like the one here in Vancouver, they wanted to make it harder for recreational people or a person that's not, quote, commercial or a business to do stuff like that. For the exemption for model aircraft flyers, I'm assuming they mean those existing model aircraft clubs, for example. So if they already have something established, then it's kind of like what they said now, they can fly wherever they want in their fields. That's what I assume that means anyways. Although it is kind of interesting with the terminology changing from UAV to RPAS, remotely piloted aerial systems. I don't know, to me does it really matter in terms of the terminology? I guess that's kind of to distinguish things like model aircraft versus, I guess, the drones and stuff now, I assume. I don't know, not too big of a deal. It says, rules for drone pilots, subject to new licensing regime based on the category of operation, limited or complex. Provisions for underage persons fly under supervision of a license holder. New online portal will contain pilot registration, drone registration, license exam, and study material. Removing requirement for third-party liability insurance. different open book online tests depending on category of operation. At least 80% of requirement to pass exam, subject to 2-year recency requirements. RPAS operators will be required to be in possession of their certificate while operating the unit. Complex operators will have to undergo a flight review with government-approved examiner. No mandated requirement for classroom training. One can challenge the exam. Holders of the regular pilot license would not be exempted, but must take RPAS exam for the type of operation unless exempted under the Model Aircraft Clause. So a lot of the same stuff in terms of the exams and stuff like that we're told, but the biggest thing, it says removing the requirement for third-party liability insurance. So according to this, basically they're thinking of saying, okay, if you're just flying or whatever, you don't need to get insurance now, even for a recreational person. I guess that's good because, like I said, there isn't really a system for the recreational person, so it's kind of good if they actually get rid of that. I don't understand the part where it says no mandated requirement for classroom training, one can challenge the exam. What does that mean? Like people can go in and say like this isn't correct or something like that? I don't know, maybe someone else who knows more about this can chime in about that. This one seems like it's meant more for people doing business and stuff. It says rules for drone construction and design. RPAS will be required to be registered with TCCA but not marked due to privacy issues for units 250 grams to 25 kilograms. Will not establish strict design standards but will adopt industry promoted SAFE criteria for RPAS used in complex operations, the safety assured flight envelope. Removing grandfather clause for future platforms. Those currently grandfathered would only be compliant for the life of that unit. That's basically a little beyond me, but I just remember something in this session. There was something saying for commercial drones and stuff like that, they're thinking of making certain drones, like they have to pass a criteria, so you can only use those type of equipment. And people are like, well, what happens with all my equipment now? They said, oh, don't worry, it will grandfather it, I guess, forever. Whereas this one says it'll be just for the unit's lifetime. So if that thing breaks, then you can't buy, like, say, I guess, another model of that same type again. Rules for safety, speed limits removed. Distance limit from operator removed. Must be within visual line of sight and maintain VFR at all times. Maximum altitude of 400 feet AGL except in controlled airspace and within the limits of the ATC clearance. If assigned higher by ATC, must remain within VLOS. Night operations will be authorized once requirements for VLOS and lighting are determined. Removed all references to built up in urban areas, will go solely on distance relative to people. And it says bracket people in open, not people inside a building or a vehicle. It says for aerodromes, no entry into controlled airspace except within ATC clearance, to remain 3 nm from the center of the uncontrolled airport, to remain outside the published circuit pattern and approach path of an uncontrolled aerodrome or water aerodrome, to remain 1 nm from the center of a heliport. Manned aircraft have the right of way. CFS, CWS will be the guiding document for the location of aerodromes. I looked it up briefly and it says CFS means Canada Flight Supplement and CWAS means Canada Water Aerodrome Supplement. Again, it's a little foreign to me, so if anyone wants to educate others about it, feel free to chime in. So from what I get out of this, the good thing is basically they increased the limit in terms of how much higher you can get. Because I believe 400 feet is at about, what, 120 meters? Whereas right now they say about 90 meters. The visual line of sight thing is, I'm still a little iffy about that just because of the way it's worded. Because technically still, like even if you're flying around a tree, like literally you're flying around a tree, there's no one here and you can't see it, technically that's illegal. And I don't think that's proper just with the way people fly drones, what you have available, how you can see everything and all that. But one of the tricky things is this around the airport and stuff like that. I mean, it makes sense if the person's actually going right into it, you want like a good clearance. But then again, if it's someone flying in his own house in the backyard, even if he's technically within the zone, why can't they fly, I don't know, I'm just making it up, but like 20 meters in the air within their own house or something like that, like way far away from the actual airport? You might be in the zone, but what realistic chance is, like, say, a 100-gram drone gonna cause trouble in that case in their own property? So overall, what do people think about this? I think overall it's actually a good step in the right direction. I think I'm actually surprised just based on all the past stuff that's happened. Because for me as a recreational person, I guess I'm trying to think about it. It makes it more flexible in terms of how high you can fly. I guess if that's true about things like, for example, the no insurance, that's great because it'll make it more accessible now, not that ridiculous, like for example, what is it, $600 a year or $1,000, whatever it is, because there's nothing for recreational people now. The exams and stuff, I'm still not sure. And I guess the tricky point still is things about the flying in the zones. I mean, technically, like, let's pretend right now I'm within an airport zone. Why can't I fly it like here, like in the middle of the forest inside here, something like that? Like, I don't know, it has to be something more towards, quote, safety, like, use common sense. There's gonna be no way a helicopter or a plane should come down here, for example. Like, I should be able to fly here. Actually, just an example of myself, one place I would love to actually fly the drone in a safe way is like, say, Stanley Park in downtown, but obviously you can't because it's in the middle of the seaplanes and stuff and all that. But like there, if I was in the middle of the forest and let's just say I don't go any higher than just say the tree or something like that, shouldn't that be okay realistically? Like that would be my example of, I don't know, it has to be more towards safety than just a blanket statement in many ways.
Are you heading to the concert by any chance?
No, is there a concert? What a fantastic example that was. There was an elderly couple that I wanted to take pictures in a flower, so they asked me to help them. And then I said, do you want like an aerial picture? And I said, I have a drone. He's like, you have a drone? They're like, yeah, they're so excited about it. That's a great example. They're like, a person like me should be able to do that. There's nothing crazy or dangerous about it. I mean, it's just too much hysteria. Like for the most part, when people think, you know, they're always gonna crash and so forth. I mean, have precautions, but for the most part, people do it really safely. All right, see you guys later.